Welcome back to Ireland AM. Now, would you swap your smartphone for a... Are we calling them dumb phones?
I don't know why it's called
I don't know. It's just a phone. It's like a Nokia. That's the question our next guest asked herself, opting to use an old school flip phone, which were so cool, to test its impact on her daily life.
Here to discuss her experience is editor-in-chief of Stellar magazine, Megan Rowntree, and joining her is cyber psychologist Dr. Nicola Fox-Hamilton. Good morning.
Hi, guys.
To you both. So a dumb phone. So basically, it's like an old Nokia. It's one that doesn't have kind of Instagram or whatever else.
Yeah.
What made you want to do that, Megan?
Just, I would say, my pure dependence and addiction on my smartphone. Like, I'm just constantly scrolling, constantly. It's always in my hand. Like, someone asked me, how often do you think you spend on your phone? And I'm like, it's more that it's all, like, it's never not. I never don't have it, if that makes sense. It's just always in my hand. I'm either scrolling or I'm about to scroll. So it just felt like a little bit all-consuming. So I said the only thing that's going to work is...
I was reading about this last night, and you said that your hand is in the shape of a phone. Almost. Like, that's terrible. Like,
it's so bad.
I was thinking the same. I was thinking, mine's the same.
Yeah, so I just felt like I tried to delete apps, I tried to put limits on things. It's not powerful enough to keep me away, so I just figured the only thing would be a literal flip phone with no apps.
I thought the limiters that you could put on things like Instagram was going to be amazing, and all it is pop up. You've used your limit. That's it. You just dismiss.
You just say okay and move on.
How was it adjusting to life without your smartphone, and how long did you last?
So initially it was lovely. It was like I was romanticising this new, old school life, and I found it really, really good, because when you pick up your flip phone, I had like a Blockia, you're like, okay, I'm not missing anything here, and you put it back down. Whereas the social media on phones, you're always going to find something to entertain you. If WhatsApp's not doing it for you, TikTok will do it, or Twitter or whatever. Whereas that phone, I flipped it open and I went, all right, okay, unless I want to play Snake, like, there's nothing really for me on this phone, and I put it back down. So over the weekend, it was lovely. Like, it was so nice, and I was like, this is it, this is great. But it's when it comes back to reality, work, real life communication, like, there's no WhatsApp. That was the biggest one. That kind of stuff's impossible to avoid, I think,
Yeah.
We called it a Blokia.
We did,
It's
and
a
they meant
Blockia.
Blockia, the block phone. Earlier on we said, we were like, what the hell is a Blockia?
Boy phone.
Is this an addiction?
No. So addiction is a clinical term, and there is no clinical addiction to phones, addiction to social media. It's something we use quite lightly. We say we're addicted to chocolate and caffeine and things like that, and it's the same with our phones. And I think a lot of people believe that they use it too much, but really a better way of framing it is to say that we've created some bad habits maybe that aren't serving us as well. And that gives us a lot more power over our own actions, because we can change our habits, whereas addiction is something that feels kind of out of control. And so I think that a lot of people have the perception that they're using their phones a lot more than they are, and our state of mind actually increases that. So if you're depressed or lonely, you actually perceive you're using it more than you actually are. Which I think is really interesting. So our own perception of how much we're using it isn't always very accurate either.
I hear when it pops up, though, it's the time you spent on social media, and you're like, I spend my whole time going, I'm not looking at what apps I was using, I work on my phone to make myself feel a little bit better. And I'm like, oh, I'm down 10% this week, I'm so good. Like, we do kind of justify it by being like, it is also where I work now, right?
We do, but it's also where we connect with our friends and the people that we like and are in touch with, and we maintain relationships. So that's not a negative thing. We perceive an awful lot of stuff about our phones as being very, very negative, but actually we're getting a lot out of it. We're doing a lot of useful things. We're answering emails, we're doing some work stuff, but we're also connecting with people that we care about, and we're looking up interesting things, and we're learning new things. Like, none of those are negative things. And so I think having a little bit more of a realistic idea of the things that we do on there is quite useful for changing how we look at our phone use.
Well, yes, but at the same time, like, scrolling, TikTok, Instagram for hours.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure there's goodness that can be taken out of this, but there has to be bad side too.
Yeah, so I think what's really useful is the difference between passive use and active use.
Okay.
So we know from the research that if you're passively using it, if you're just scrolling, you're never interacting, you're never actually posting yourself, and also if you're following celebrities, influencers, and not actual friends, so you're not connecting with people you know and getting that kind of social support from it, that tends to lead to a bit lower well-being just in the moment while you're doing it. Whereas if you're actively engaging, you're connecting with people you love and care about, you're learning interesting things, you're posting yourself, you understand the curation process, that you only post the best bits, and so are other people. And so you're less likely to be envious of other people. That is like associated with increasing well-being in the moment. So paying attention to how you're feeling after your phone use, I think, is important.
That is interesting, because we were talking to Coleman Noctor earlier on about loneliness and what's going on there. You're nodding along to an awful lot of what Nicola is saying, Megan. So for you, did you see positives and negatives?
Yeah. And I think, like, you know, in my kind of conclusion in it, I think I felt like I don't need TikTok and I probably don't need Instagram, but like I need WhatsApp. So like you're talking about the relationships. Obviously I use WhatsApp to get pictures of my nephews and things like that. Like I can't ever say no to that. But
Even
I don't need no, I always want them, believe me. But I don't need like hours of scrolling on TikTok, because that's not, especially I think TikTok's a really interesting one because you're not really connecting with friends. It's not really a social network in the same way that Instagram and WhatsApp are. You know, you're not really saying, oh, my friend was in Galway yesterday and there's a nice video. It's like strangers in America or whatever. So that element I think is probably the one that I went, like, I really don't need this. It's not adding anything to me. And I still went back to it. Once I went back to my phone, I'm right back on TikTok. But it definitely felt like very clear to me that I could live without those things if I just restricted myself. Whereas WhatsApp is so part of our daily life these days, with work and personal and everything. So I think if that flip phone had maybe a WhatsApp functionality on it, I would have lasted. Maybe not forever, but definitely longer than I did.
It's made you a lot more conscious of it as well, which I think is a good thing. And we can, I suppose, dumb down your iPhone and delete apps or whatever else. Is there any benefits that you get from it, like sleeping, for instance?
Yeah, definitely, because like at the moment, pre and post using this phone, I scroll on TikTok to fall asleep. Like, it's such a bad habit.
To fall asleep?
Yeah. And it's like, I described it as like a really, really
Nicola's
bad
eyes just went,
pill. Like,
sorry? No.
It's like the worst sleeping pill ever, because it works eventually, but I can't. Exactly, like brain melting stuff. But I mean, I can't. Yeah, I know. I'm sure it's impacting it's impacting everything. You're getting information of 15, 20 different topics all within a minute before you fall asleep, and yet I can't not do it. Like, I put my phone away and then I lie there and I'm like, not thinking about TikTok, not thinking about scrolling, and then I'm there for 2 hours and I say, okay, well, it's better if I just do this, at least I'll get to sleep.
Nicola?
It's like, that's the reality I'm dealing with. Like,
Nicola, stage an intervention?
So I think there's two aspects to that. So there's one, we know that the light from phones helps us, doesn't help us go to sleep. It prevents us going to sleep. It activates the brain. But also on something like TikTok, you don't know what you're going to get. So you might get something upsetting. You might get something that makes you really excited. You might get something really interesting that you can't stop thinking about. And that'll send your brain into kind of overdrive. And so it's very difficult to get to sleep after something like that. You want to be trying to avoid your phone for at least 30, 60 minutes before bed, if possible.
Megan's like, yeah, sure.
I know it, and yet
we all know,
yeah.
but it's very difficult to do it. Listen, Megan Rowntree, thank you very much for your honesty with that. Very good.
Yes.
Editor-in-Chief of Stellar Magazine, and you need it for your work. Nicola Fox Hamilton, a cyber psychologist. Thank you for that. The two boys are over here, pretend to with their own dumb phones over there. We're going to be looking at some dumb phones after the break.
Bye.